morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, a great day to be alive, and a good day to rise and shine wherever you are on earth. Of course, my name is Uyai Anyek, and this is Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
And I am Francis Oyemaide. Glad to have you joined us. It's a beautiful day. Of course, the second day known as Money Day for some people. Tuesday happens to be the day people are able to get back in their work. Monday is a little bit, laid back, still dangling between getting out of the weekend vibes and starting the new week. But it's a beautiful day, and here on Rise and Shine, we'd like to talk Nigeria, Africa, and the world as we take you around the latest development. Of course, we'll always encourage you to follow us on our socials, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTvLive.ng. Definitely will take you to all of our conversations. Of course, the phone lines will also be on for you to join the conversations within the course of our show this morning. Usually there's a lot of things, plethora of stories happening, but for last night, I think the most interesting story that I came across was the advice for the National Assembly members to cut down cost of governance and by reducing their salary up to 50%.
I think it's the most beautiful news I have read, in recent times, and it's more like if we can do this, we will be on a very, quick way to recovering a lot. But these are some of the things we're talking about this morning. We also see that the federal government is planning 26 trillion naira as budget, and debt servicing to go up 8.25 trillion naira. Some of the conversations we'll be looking into this morning. We also see that the Red Cross is planning 23 billion naira aid as Nigeria's hunger crisis becomes more worrisome. Some of the things that we're looking at this morning is the federal government's probe into expenditure, which stands at about $100 million US, of course, on Nigerian women project. There's a plethora of things we're talking about. Hospital in Lagos State has been shut down because of a blood that was used on the patient without being screened. Details of this will come up shortly on Rise and Shine this morning. We also see the fact that the appeal court has asked parties to transfer all election appeals to Abuja and Lagos. Of course, we're still having election petitions going all around the 36 states of the Federation at this time.
Well, it's definitely a whole lot. Of course, today is International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. We'll also be looking at that global celebration. Of course, we will have a guest join us to navigate the issues bordering on our collective growth and advancement as a people. I mean, when you look at the staggering number, 100 million plus of Nigerians who are living in abject poverty, definitely gives cause for concern, particularly with the present administration, which, of course, the few policies they've rolled out, many economies and experts have said, has further driven that number to another one that is yet to even be realistically assessed as far as data is concerned. But, of course, it's a big responsibility for Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his cabinet to set the ball rolling and, of course, upturn the downturn in the economic sector in order to provide a better work environment for Nigerians. Of course, it's also World Spine Day, day where we are reminded to look into the things happening around our environment. We're being encouraged to walk around, do a lot more exercise in order to maintain a healthy spine. As we know, the spine controls a lot about our well-being, and that is one area of a body that we should not play or toy with. So we'll be looking at a plethora of these stories and a lot more. Of course, you can also join the conversations with the phone line. So send us a direct message via our social media platform or via WhatsApp, and we'll definitely be glad to take those comments.
Well, let's start from the very, very top this morning. The most juicy story that we have for us this morning is the move to ask the National Assembly and people serving in public offices that, their salaries of politicians should be reduced by 50%. This is the request that was put forward. and we are seeing how, you know, there's a lot of reaction to these, as we can see how Nigerians are responding to this. This is one of the things that we have clamored for in the longest possible time. It's something that we've talked about. If we can cut down the cost of governance, especially from the root of how much, you know, public servants, people serving in political offices are taking back home, if we're looking at about 50% cut down on that, we will go a very, very long way. Imagine if a person is earning about plus or minus, now let's say that earning 15 million naira a month, aside all other benefits. If you cut down 15 million into two, and then, you know, do the math, multiply by the number of persons we are paying this morning, run it into a year, we'll be able to you know, take up a lump sum and invest into other things, you know, at this time.
Well, I think what Kingsley Moghalu has recommended is definitely, you know, something that we've been talking about consistently. Being an economist himself, being a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, being one who is well-read, well-traveled, and very much in in terms with the different operations of other countries of the world. I think this is an advice that the President, Ahmed Bola Tinubu's administration, needs to consider. But then Nigerians question whether this will actually come to see the light of day, or if there is any room for them to reconsider. Recall not just long ago we saw a member of the House of Assembly coming out to say that what they take home is not even enough for them to land in the political balance for every time they go home. And that goes back to the conversation of the need for even landing. Would there ever be a need for politicians to land at every homecoming or at every point in time where they gather their constituents? Will there be any point for them to land from their pocket outside of the constituency finances that has been given to them? The answer to that question, Nigeria will say yes and no. No, there won't be any need for landing, because if the politicians, the leaders, are able to proffer solutions to all of Nigerians, or some of, you know, Nigerians' problem bordering on economic advancement, then you will have Nigerians being able to eke out a living for themselves. So the situation of having youths, particularly, or old women or women turning out in their numbers to politicians' gates whenever they know that, oh, they're coming to the village or they're coming around, will be drastically reduced, because everybody will be busy trying to make out a living, because the environment, the enabling environment has been provided, the opportunities are there, so those excuses will not be there. So politicians will not have any need to be landing. That means whatever they're taking home will just be for them to also take care of their personal needs at the home front. So the bulk of the responsibility here is just about the sincerity on the part of politicians to ensure that policies are rolled out, implemented in a way that every single person in the streets of Nigeria can actually eke out a living for his or herself and be able to take care of his or her family.
Now, the reason why Kingsley Moghalu is asking that, you know, salaries of, you know, public office holders, politicians, and National Assembly members should be cut down, why he's particularly saying this is that owing to the economic hardship we are facing in the country, it becomes a necessary evil for these salaries to be, you know, cut down because of the volume that they take him at the end of the day. It is only wise that the federal government will look into certain places and take out some funds. I know that one of the biggest concerns in Nigeria is this even possible in this country? Like Francis rightly said, I think about a month ago, we saw members of, I think it was the House of Reps, saying that what they even take home is not enough for them. But we need to consider this. And if we cast our minds back in Kenya, just about 2 months ago, we saw the Kenyan government cutting out salaries out of pay of public office holders and politicians. Their salaries were cut down just to be able to cushion how much the system was spending. We also see, of course, that the likes of Kingsley Moghalu, it's important you also look back. Who is the person talking? Why would you prefer these as a solution at this time? Of course, we will not forget the fact that he is an economist and a former deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. I think it's in the medical sector where we are trying to get the hands of people that have retired to come on board, and try to help the failing system. Now, when we have people that have sat in these kinds of reputable positions, preferring certain kinds of solutions to just help us buffer the system, we would really think that the federal government will look into this. The culture of governance is very important. It's a strong issue that needs to be addressed, and the tone has to be set from the top. because I mean, it was in the course of all of this since May 29 that we've also heard the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying to Nigerians, yes, we are privy to the sufferings and the plight of Nigerians, but we would beg Nigerians, beg the citizens to suffer a little bit more. The biggest question at that time was what are the politicians willing to suffer? The people at the echelon of politics and other public offices in this country, what are they willing to suffer? All of us must be able to find a way to buffer. But this is a strong move. We do hope that the issue with this, Francis, is that although this motion is pushed, it needs to be deliberated upon by the National Assembly. So are they people in the National Assembly that will sit upon this deliberation, or especially because it affects them directly, and will now give a thumbs up or give a yes to this kind of motion to see the light of day? That would be the biggest concern. But even the smallest person in Nigeria knows that is a really big step that can help us if it could be looked into.
Well, that can only happen if the legislators themselves are sincere, if their primary assignment and primary duty and interest is that of Nigerians and their constituents who elected them to go represent them. But if they're much more about amassing wealth and further enriching themselves, we're never going to see such a thing, such a motion ever happening. It would be a thing of joy. It would be a glorious celebration, the biggest of all breaking news for Nigerians. If we wake up on a plenary day and we get to hear that there is a motion, seeking for the cutting down of expenditure or salary on the part of politicians, from the president to the National Assembly to the Senate and the House of Reps down to the state level.
Exactly.
We see a supporting move also made by the state houses of assembly. And then, of course, we actually get to see these motions being passed into law, even if it's for the time being, for Nigeria to, get back on its feet, stabilize, and the economy is back on its stride. If that happens, then I think that would show the greatest part to the commitment on the part of Ahmed Bola Tinubu, the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, the House of Reps Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, who have all been preaching for Nigerians to be patient, to sacrifice. So that would be their own measure of sacrificing and showing Nigerians that, yes, we are asking you to sacrifice. We are asking you to endure for the time being so that we can all get to where we are headed with the renewed hope agenda. And in order for us to further encourage you to do that, this is what we are also doing, so that you see that we are in this together. Outside of that, it's just going to be another advocacy that is, ended on the front page of papers and media conversations, and the National Assembly would do nothing about it. But if they do nothing about such statement, it further goes to show that they are there basically for themselves, not primarily for the interest of Nigerians.
I think another question will be, once these monies are removed, multiplied by the number of persons, across state, federal government and state governments, when these monies are, taken out, 50%, if it is taken out, Francis, we need to, sit down also as a body and agree where the chunk of that money is going to be invested. It's not just that you hear that, oh, the salaries were cut out. The salaries were cut out, the benefits were cut out. Where did they invest it? Because that's another problem. Everything in this country seems to be a pipeline, for corruption, for siphoning monies. So if you take out 50% of these politicians' money, members of the National Assembly, House of Reps, state houses of assembly, governors, and the president, where will we be taking all of this money to? That will be, a very big question. And it would be important if Nigeria saw real time where the government was also going to do this. I think another big problem with, that Kingsley Moghalu also raised is that we are too dependent on borrowing. So if we take some of these monies in the way we are circling it in the country and cushion the weights of our borrowing, it will help us to a very, very large extent. So let's see how, minders of the system would take in this advice as rendered by Kingsley Moghalu. Let's see if the next couple of days running into a month, if we're going to see a downward review of salaries to politicians. This has been clamored for the highest ever in the history of Nigeria since May 29. Of course, we have seen how things have turned. But let's move on from that particular story this morning. 2024 is just at the brink of the corner, and conversations are already here. What is the federal government going to do, and how are they going to stand? Budgetary conversations have already started going on. We had heard initially that there is a move to make sure that the budget for the next year is completed in the previous year before we get in. in, and the federal government is saying that their intention, projected budget for 2024 stands at about 26 trillion naira, and also we see them intending to set aside 8.25 trillion. Okay, out of that 26 trillion naira of the budget, 8.25 trillion naira will be used to service debt. We have 26 trillion naira set aside for budget as projected. 8.25 of that trillion naira is going to be used to service the debt burden that we are already standing in. These are some of the issues that the likes of Kingsley Moghalu and the rest of the economists in the country are talking about. We are too dependent on borrowing, at this time. But budgetary conversations, we are seeing that the personnel and debt service cost, of course, is standing at a really high end at this time.
Well, when you see a country who consistently spends more on debt servicing, it definitely shows that the minders of the systems are not prioritizing areas that should be prioritized. Economists will always say Nigeria has all it takes to, get to the point of not borrowing, but actually being able to borrow other countries of the world to handle their affairs as well. But why are we not capitalizing on the potentials? Why are we not capitalizing on the resources that we have? Why are we not thinking forward to moving away from being borrowers to actually being the ones borrowing the money? It's simply a question of lack of will or political will on the part of our leaders, a question of maybe inability to have the right thinking process, the right mindset, the right ideas that will be able to change the narrative. These two things contribute to where Nigeria is. But if you look at it, there is a good indication therefore about the fact that the pension cost is expected to increase from about 5.87 to about 7.78 in the 2024 budget, which of course would mean that the government of the day is more intentional and deliberate in making sure people who have saved the government, who have saved Nigeria, do not get to continue suffering and asking for what is their due. Of course, we're also looking at the fact that apart from the debt servicing costs, the World Bank, as in June 2022, said that the federal government spending on personnel costs and debt servicing exceeded its total revenues. Now, this is another serious conversation. That means all of the revenues that we have in Nigeria is not even enough to service our debt. So if we do not, from all of the billions that is being generated across board, across the different agencies, it is not enough to settle our debt. What happens to the finances needed for capital expenditure, the finances needed for day-to-day running of government, the finances needed for investment into infrastructure and different facets of the society that needs this money? These are serious concerns. But one thing is certain. If Ahmed Bola Tinubu and the Renewed Hope agenda is going to succeed in Nigeria, then we need to see a deliberate move. We need to see a consistent effort. We need to see the political will being exerted across board to show forth and show proof that the Renewed Hope agenda is meant to transform Nigeria, and that the people at the helms of affairs are committed, as well as they're asking Nigerians to be committed.
Now, another issue is that in the overall, what we see here with, the playouts of the numbers for 2024 budget is the fact that the government will actually spend more servicing debt than it will be, spending paying salaries and pensions of its workers. We know that part of the biggest conversations have been what is the federal government doing for the people working for them. 2024, workers in the federal payroll will be due for salary and minimum wage review. If what the budget is already showing says that it is debt servicing and that is going to go up more of this budget than it will be for even paying personnel and salaries, then we already know that when we get into 2024, we are going to have a lot more problems than we currently have, especially if the indices with regards to inflation and high cost of living, food prices does not decline. it means that by the time we get into 2024 and we're spending more of the money set aside for budget to service debts, we're going to have more problems, on our hands. We're going to have more unions trying to get the federal government to bend over backwards to meet the needs of people working. And productivity is very, very, very important. That we should also see the fact that when we are talking budgets, we should see how the lives of people that keep the oil in the wheel of productivity, we should see how they make it very viable at this time. But the numbers are high. We continue to ask, and Francis, you know that when we are talking budget, a larger chunk of that money is going to be borrowed. We are not looking at how we are going to internally generate more than half of what our budget for 2024 is. We are going to ask the federal government, what has the federal government's earning in the year 2023 been in all of our oil exports and other exports that we do in the country, other investments that we have as a nation? What have we earned as a nation that will impact on our budget? Or are we having the nation borrow up to 50% or more of this budget from the World Bank or the IMF, and then we sit and find ourselves that we have a budget for the next year? So there's a lot of questions that we are looking into with regards of the proposed 2024 budget by the federal government. The numbers are quite a lump sum. We are seeing increases and decreases in certain areas. Of course, about 30.74% increase in debt service, which is going to cost it's rising from 6.31 trillion naira to 8.25 trillion naira by 2024. Of course, the World Bank has already told us that the federal government is spending a lot on personal cost, and it's exceeded the total revenues of 2022.
It's definitely a serious cause for concern, but one would hope that Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his members of cabinet will be able to navigate all of these concerns and issues, and therefore be able to take Nigeria out of the economic downturn that we are currently experiencing. And in the event that that is done, I think Nigerians will continue to be grateful to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and his team. But moving on to the next flash story this morning, we see that the International Federation of Red Cross has launched an emergency appeal to raise 27 million, that's about 23 billion naira, to support the Nigerian Red Cross Society to respond to the hunger crisis in the country. Of course, the agency said that a total of 1.9 million persons would be benefiting from the aid. Of course, the head of the delegation for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Blufinda Toma, disclosed this during a media chat in Abuja. Of course, he said Nigeria was facing an unprecedented hunger crisis this year, lauding President Bola Tinubu for declaring a state of emergency on food security. And of course, that takes a mind back to when the federal government declared food insecurity or an emergency in the food sector. But when you look at declaring a state of emergency as a result of food security, we know that the flood of 2022 caused a lot of havoc to farmers. We also know that this year already, the level of havoc being caused to farmland is also still very much worrisome. But when you look at all of the things that has happened to Nigeria, when you look at all of the crisis situations spiraling out of Nigeria, you look at the commitment on the part of government. Are we still having farmer-headed clashes? Yes, we are. Are we still having insurgents, members of the Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other non-state actors going into farm, kidnapping for ransom farmers? Yes, we still have. So when you declare a state of emergency, what are the plans that has been put in place to address the root cause of the problem that Nigerians are facing? Because the root cause of the problem boils down to insecurity. The root cause of the problem boils down to farmers not being able to go to farm. The root cause of the problem boils down to the farmer-headed clashes, the abduction of farmers in their farm, and all of those other issues associated with it. The root cause of that also goes down to the flood disaster ravaging the country, which, of course, if the government had been proactive enough, seeing what happened in 2022, we would not be saying the same story this year, 2023. So it's a great cause for concern, but it's also a good move for the Red Cross Society, moving a move to raise the finances that will be needed to support Nigerians who truly would need the funds.
Well, we're seeing that they intend to reach about 1,092,000 plus people, and these emergency funding is going to cover food, it's going to cover nutrition, it's going to cover water, sanitation, and hygiene. These are some of the things that the Red Cross intends to do with these funds that they are going to be raising. Emergency funds in Nigeria. It also still takes us back to either poor planning or poor implementation of some of the things that we are doing in this country. Of course, we see the president of the Nigerian Red Cross Society, Oluyemisi Adeaga, saying the rising number of people experiencing food insecurity is constituting a threat to the country's peace and stability. Of course, he also said Nigeria, like every other great nation, must prioritize the food needs of its citizens. These are conversations that we continue to have. Farmer header clashes in some of our agricultural strong bases have also impacted strongly on the availability of food in the country, availability of grains. And I think another big question that we need to ask as Nigerians is, what is our food storage plan and structure like in the country? Usually you would know that we should farm the nation should farm at a very large scale and have storage for grain, have storage for all kinds of food commodity in the country. So far, so good. Where does our food storage plan stand as a nation? And if we were to be thrown into an emergency, a more dire situation with regards to food insecurity or food scarcity, is there a way that the federal government will cushion this, or we would have to wait until we are able to import every single food item from around the world, and we of course can see how grossly impacted different nations of the world are currently, as different wars and different issues are springing up. So it's high time that the federal government thought through for itself. These are ventures put together by other arms and agencies of government that helps to cushion what the federal government is doing. But it is time for the government of Nigeria to become more proactive. Agriculture is very, very important. Food security and availability is very important for the gross development of any nation. But then we're going to move on from that particular story. Let's look at our first major story for today. More probes are coming up, and the federal government is seeking to probe the expenditure of $100 million on Nigerian women project. Of course, we saw the federal government handing a 30-day ultimatum to the United Nations and other international agencies in Nigeria, within which they should give a detailed account on how funds from donor agencies have been spent over the years. Of course, the federal government is threatening that should the United Nations and the international agencies refuse to give an account of the expenditure, the federal government is saying they would go to court to compel them to do so. Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy, issued the threat during a press conference held yesterday. Of course, we are looking at the fact that from the 16th through the 15th, or the 16th of October through the 15th of November, she's given these organizations to time for them to come through, and failure to submit this to the ministry would proceed to court. This is a really serious issue, and I've personally been in around these environments of international donor agencies in Nigeria, and I have seen the kinds of activities that go on there. When loads of money is being voted by different donor agencies, from the international community, and they come into Nigeria for certain projects, we find out that corruption also has a very strong base in those places. Some of the activities that they are meant to do are not clean, they are not done on a clean slate. So at this time, I feel like it's more like the first time in history, because more like she's putting a searchlight on that particular sector. It is a sector of the economy. Donor agencies, aid sent from the likes of USAID into the country. What have we done when thousands of dollars are set aside for certain projects? Do we see that these projects are done? If the projects are done, to what extent did we spend? I think another worrisome thing is that oftentimes when these kinds of projects comes into the country, it creates employment opportunities for Nigerians living in Nigeria with these donor agencies. We also find out that there is a lot of corruption in the system with regards to, for instance, if Uju Kennedy is going to probe into some of those those issues, you'd find out that at the federal level, a certain amount of money has been voted as payments of salaries for people working in the systems. But from the federal level to when it gets to the state levels and the local governments, levels, you find out that these monies are slashed and they keep eating into it till the final people who are meant to get these salaries and benefit for the work that they do for these agencies, they finally go home with peanuts. So I personally feel like this is a really good call by the Ministry of Women Affairs, as led by Uju Kennedy, to probe the activities of these donor agencies. All of the monies that have been set aside for projects within the country, so far so good. How far has it been used? Has it been judiciously used, or we are just having cover-up stories for these projects?
Well, it's definitely a very great concern. It's a beautiful way to start, but how sustainable is the move? Well, is there a real power on the part of Uju Kennedy to actually follow through? You know that the donor agencies and the operations, those are like one of the most lucrative areas that people want to venture into. That's why we've witnessed the proliferation of NGOs everywhere. Everybody wants to be beard attack humanitarian. You look at people's profiles on social media, it literally seems like adding the title humanitarian, to your profile. It's an added advantage at this point in time. So it's a good step made by Uju Kennedy, and of course, Nigerians and would expect that these international agencies will be able to, in line with their own rules of engagement, be able to roll out the report and let the ministry and Nigerians know exactly how much has been expended. But Nigerians will not also be surprised. If you look at the reactions to that news over the social media, Nigerians will say, yes, we might not necessarily have corruption coming from the international agencies. We might be having those corruption being perpetrated by our people within the system. So when you're propping, be ready and prepare for what is going to happen. The numbers of high caliber men and women in the society who are going to be indicted in the event that these guys actually decide to come out and issue the report that you're seeking for. And then the big question now comes in. When the report is given and you find out that the movers and shakers of society are actually indicted, what moves are you ready to make? Is it going to be another, we've gotten the report, we are investigating those who have been found one thing, and that is all the reason Nigerians are going to hear about it?
Yeah, it's a really serious concern. I mean, it's alarming. If you are in the system, you'd find out that there is a lot of wrongdoing, and that assertion by Nigerians is very, very correct. It may not be on the part of the international communities or the donor funders that are coming into the country. Once it lands on our soil, there is all kinds of things. You were the person that was talking about landing cost. Everything that comes into Nigeria, people want landing for it. So when donor agencies, bring funds for certain projects, we are talking about HIV, we are talking about tuberculosis, we are talking about, saving children from the streets. We're talking about all kinds of projects. By the time it comes in, you're going to have the commissioners in certain states and, certain places tell you that, okay, this is what they're supposed to spend on it. We are going to take this chunk, and then you send myself, funds for the execution. So like you said, if she's going to push into this investigation and probe, and she is trying to do it over the years, she's not just looking like at 2022 and 2023, she's going to find a lot of mind-boggling things. But beyond what she's going to find, what are the steps that she is going to put in place? What are the steps that the ministry will put in place to check the activities of donor agencies in Nigeria, especially when Nigerians are concerned? I mean, they will not come into your country and carry out activities without gaining access to certain, minders of the system, stakeholders in the system. Our stakeholders, will be part of the biggest chunk of the problem she's going to be discovering. And let's see how these reviews can be done, especially like we just had conversations this morning about, decreasing salaries for public officers, politicians, and the likes. And you're seeing that for donor agencies and international communities, NGOs that come into work in the country, like you said, it looks like a green land where everybody wants to work. But then again, most of the times you find out that they are grossly cheated, especially those that are at the base of the ladder. Everyone who is above them takes, and then they go home with peanuts. Recently in those circles, you find out that, and sometimes you find out that what is being paid in this particular state, it's different from what is paid in the next state for the same quality of job delivery that they are doing. And you find out, what happened? And I know I recently heard a story where someone had issues with their payments and wrote directly to the FCT, the headquarters. And when, you know, the salary was paid, it's like the person was shocked. This is too much. This is not how much I earn. Just for you to hear that, oh, you know, at the center, that is how much your salary is worth. But by the time it comes down to your state government, they have cut it and cut it and cut it, and you go home and in a day where you see, before you breathe, someone has cut out another 5,000 out of the Maisali fund that you're getting. So there's a lot of things she needs to look into. And I think another thing that she's looking at is the fact that, you know, women projects. You're using cancer awareness, you're using you know, all kinds of awareness and masquerading it in the name of women, but how many women are truly touched by this project? I think that's the big question that Uju Kennedy, who is in charge of the Ministry of Women Affairs, is trying to unearth at this particular time. But let's move from that particular story. A lot more is happening. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Make your contributions, take advantage of our social media platforms. Our phone lines are being displayed on the screen. You can call in to give your thoughts. What do you really think you know, about some of these moves made by these ministers that were appointed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? A number of them have really put out a solid foot in their ministries and are really blazing the trail with regards to certain policies and innovations that they're bringing about. But do you truly believe that they will be able to bring long-standing solutions to these kinds of things? So take advantage of our phone line, send us WhatsApp messages, feel free to call in, and we will take those calls and those contributions. Please do ensure that when you call us, you stay within the bounds of healthy conversation and no disregard for anyone else who is listening this morning. Of course, we move on from that particular story. We're looking at that hospital, Francis, that was shut down because of using on-screen blood. It is, first of all, troubling.
It is not just troubling. Oh yeah, it is saddening. It is completely destructive for every person or any person to hear that there is a hospital, a licensed hospital operating in Nigeria. And of all the places, you're looking at, you know, Lagos State, the epicenter of activities. One would expect that with the position that Lagos State is, with the advancement and economic, you know, activities in Lagos, that people will be a lot more professional, people will be a lot more intentional, people will be a lot more deliberate. One would expect that of all the places in the world, hospitals will know that with these, in this area where there are different diseases that can be transmitted through blood, that the first and most critical assignment of the medical facility is to ensure that bloods are well, thoroughly screened before. You don't just screened and confirmed before it is being saved away or stored away and then eventually being used to administer into, to people. I think this goes a long way to show the level of decay within the medical sector. It goes a long way to talk about the unprofessional practices that is happening within the health sector. It goes a lot to show that people who have sworn an oath to protect lives and properties have made themselves agents of darkness to actually, be the ones causing the harm on people. Now, imagine somebody walking into a hospital sick, probably ill and in need of blood transfusion, but never had any infections, diseases, or transmitted diseases. Look at HIV and AIDS. Look at other diseases that can be transmitted through blood, and then you transfuse that person with a blood that is infested
and
with a lot of diseases, and then the person goes back home and it becomes a bigger problem. So somebody who came to the hospital to seek for help, somebody who came to the hospital to be treated and to go back held and hearty, comes to the hospital, and rather than go back held and hearty, goes back with more problems that the person actually brought to the hospital. And then some people will say, this is an oversight. How is it an oversight? Because everybody knows in this country, I think literally within the course of last month that I had to be in the hospital, even with the closeness that I had with the patient, a family member that I had to transmit blood for, that blood was taken, but it took a proper screening to screen and verify and make sure that there was nothing in my blood system that was not supposed to be, that could be transfused into the next person. So if family members' blood are being thoroughly screened that way, how much more blood that you know nothing about? So you just pick blood from everybody who walks into the hospital to donate blood, store it away, and when other people come in who need blood, you sell it to them and you infuse them. But you're not just infusing them. So people use their money to buy more problems for themselves. People use their money to buy more sicknesses for themselves. And then, of course, in these, all of these, it seems like I think health has become one other venture that people just feel like is all about making money. So irrespective of the practices that is ongoing, as long as we are able to make money, as long as we are able to make profit, as long as we are able to make gains, we don't care about whose oils is gorged. And that is something that we need to drastically look into. Nigerians would expect that the Lagos state government will not just shut down this hospital, but we will look into the ownership of this hospital. Nigerians want to see that the operators, the managers of these hospitals are being prosecuted for the number of illegal activities that have happened. Who knows how many thousands of Nigerians have been transfused with, infested or disease-infested blood? Who know how many people are already having issues in their homes because the blood has been transfused, and then maybe a husband went into the hospital, the wife and the husband have been together for a long time, they don't know. I'm just trying to paint a scenario. Imagine a husband walking into a hospital being transfused, and then you go back and a few years down the line, you're discovering you're HIV positive. You have been faithful to your wife. So the very first question is, my wife is unfaithful. And then there is a problem in a home, all because somebody somewhere failed to do due diligence of screening a blood before transfusing to the next person. So beyond shutting down the hospital, Nigerians want to see the managers of that hospital, the minders of the system in that hospital, the ownership of that hospital being within the provisions of the law of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and prosecuted. Only then will we be able to solve this problem. Because if we see that tomorrow we hear, oh, the hospital is back, operating and nothing has been done, then definitely other hospitals might be emboldened to continue with such crimes.
These are serious issues on our hands, and we need to really see how we can stabilize the activities in the health sector. We are having a lot more of our healthcare facilities around the country do a lot of things against the guidelines, of their medical profession. If Nigerians will tell you their experiences in different hospitals in this country, it will be alarming. It will also go short to talk about why, an average person who can afford it will really want to get health, treatment and all of that from outside the country. There is a lot of decadence that has come into our health system. That does not go to say that we do not have people doing the proper thing, but we're saying that there is a rise in nefarious activities within the health sector, and that is absolutely dangerous. It is an inhumane action against humanity. But now we're going to just go straight ahead to Daily Spotlight, where we look at developing issues around the country and the front pages of our national dailies. Do stay with us.
On a Daily Spotlight this morning, we're starting with the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. And of course, on the front page, the kicker there says, resume or resign. Ondo PDP youth tells Akredolu. Of course, the writer there says, give him 72 hours ultimatum, vow to sustain protest. Got to hear Akredolu Ayedatiwa's application, October 30th. That story is on page 15. Akpabio instigated my sack, Senator Arbor alleges. That story is on page 16, and you have as a writer there, as he loses Senate seat to PDP's Amos Yahona, alleges 4 senators to be sacked for not backing Akpabio's Senate presidency bid. Senate president has no hand in his predicament aid. That's in response to what Senator Arbor has alleged this morning. That story is on page 16 of the Nigerian Tribune. Still on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, federal government projects 26 trillion naira for 2024 budget. That story is on page 26 this morning Of course, still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, Nigerian inflation rate rises to 26.72% as food prices soar. Page 6 has that story. And of course, we're also seeing federal government begins destruction of $1.2 million worth of pangolin scales. That story is on page 5. Those are the major stories you find on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
We move on from the front page of Nigerian Tribune and head to the Vanguard. The big story on Vanguard this morning says PDP, LP fire federal government as cost of food items drive inflation to 26.7%. We also see here presidency, APC keep mum. NBS report on soaring food prices, verdict on Tinubu's rule, says LP. Nigerians now spend income on food, yet not enough, says Obi. Tinubu, APC unprepared for governance, says PDP. No respite for consumer prices. Of course, reports given there by analysts. We also see here PDP crisis, Wike queries AGBOT chairman Wabara. Page 9 is where you can find details of that story. We also see here Southern Kaduna, how 14 persons were killed, 31 kidnapped, says Sokapu. Page 11, very sad story. We need to see how the security agencies in Nigeria, they're climbing down more on these agencies. We also see a federal government proposes 26.01 trillion naira for 2024 appropriation. Page 4. Bonny light price lips to $92.24 per barrel on positive forecast. We also see here advertorial. Clearance of EFCC chairman, all eyes on the Senate, Mal Nuhu Ribadu, NSA, and the intelligence community. Page 23 is where you can find details. Of course, there seems to be some saga around that particular chairmanship position that was given out. I think something else was one of these agencies where they saw their boss being sacked over the course of yesterday, and the amount of celebration that came out from that agency was alarming. Everybody celebrated that the boss was going. Well, we also see here on the front page, still we're looking at the front page of the Vanguard, Adamawa North, Abo attacks Akpabio over appeal court sack. Page 6 is where we can have details. There's a sad picture story there on the front page of the Vanguard. Plight of pensioners, talking of how they are suffering exhaustion in the midst of standing out for their verification. Very sad turn of events. We also see here Israeli threat of ground invasion doesn't scare us, says Hamas. Page 9. Strike, federal government okays implementation of 30 days MOU with Labour. Good news, page 26. We also see here Women Affairs Minister to sue United Nations over management of donor funds. Super Eagles beat 10-man Mambas 3-2. Of course, that's on Vanguard Sports. And that's what we have on the front page of the Vanguard.
Our next up is This Day newspaper. On the front page of this, they will have the key headers. Federal government okays 30 days implementation of MOU with Labour. That story is on page 8. FEG passes MTEF projects. 26.01 trillion budget for 2024. The story there is on page 6 of the This Day newspaper. Higher energy, food, commodity prices drive inflation to 26.72%. Of course, those are the major stories you find on the front page of This Day newspaper.
Okay, let's take a quick swipe on our very last paper this morning, and that will be the Nation newspaper. We'll look at the Nation, big story there this morning. Says federal government proposes, of course, 26 trillion naira for appropriation for next year. We also see here two Oshun pensioners slum during verification in Oshogbo South Story, page 27. Ayeda Tiwa loses bid to stall impeachment. Akpabio sacked Abo clash over appeal court verdict. Food, fuel prices push inflation to 26.72%. IMF phenomenon global. Well, we also see here Mayu Ogun cleared to fix toll Abeokuta Ota Road. Great news. Page 4. We also see here Kogi West elders endorse ADC candidate Abejide. Page 2 is where you can find details. We also see here lawmakers to get supplementary budget. FEC endorses $1.5 billion World Bank loan. $80 million for Ekiti Knowledge Zone. Last story, NPower beneficiaries to get pay backlog from next month. Okay, that's all we have on the front page of the Nation this morning, and that's all we are also taking on the front pages of our national dailies. A plethora of stories looking at different activities within the PDP, the APC. We also see here there's a new race against Akeredolu in Ondo State. There's been some strife going on there. Different things. We are looking at the fact that food prices have really soared and inflation is biting hard in the country at this time. More questions to be asked, and let's see how we can get solutions out of all that we are talking about. But at this time, we're going to take a break and head to the news brief desk where Mary Joseph is on standby to bring us tidbits of global news. When we return, we'll be having more focused conversations on Rise and Shine, so do stay with us.
Every day marks a day of significance.
That in view of the apology tendered by this former minister who had earlier been cleared by this August Assembly,
As we face critical issues, developments and events which shape our social and political landscape here in Nigeria and beyond. Political Spectrum is a program specially designed to help make sense of all the moving parts of developments and occurrences in our nation's polity and political economy.
There's nothing wrong with Nigeria, but there's everything wrong.
The educational history of public figures holds significance beyond mere biographical details.
From executive, legislative and judicial developments at national and subnational levels to international diplomacy and relations.
Join us for exclusive interviews with key political figures, expert opinions, analysts, thought-provoking conversations for and against, shedding light on the major issues that matter. We will always keep you updated on the most factual, smartest and unbiased reportage.
Stay tuned to Political Spectrum. Political Spectrum. All sides matter at the round table. Political Spectrum. Exclusive to Spectrum Television.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
As of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigerian for SpectrumTv to recover 40 lives in Secretary County.
A very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum. Live from Uyo, I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief with the report that the Federal Executive Council (FEC) on Monday proposed 26.01 trillion naira for the 2024 fiscal year for submission to the National Assembly. This is according to the Minister of Budget and Planning, Atiku Bagudu, who spoke after the council meeting presided over by President Bola Tinubu. According to him, FEC pegged the price of crude oil at $73.96 exchange rate of $700 and oil production of 1.78 million barrels per day. Away from that, the administration of President Bola Tinubu has reviewed the day-to-day Federal Executive Council meetings, and it should be held officially, changing it from Wednesdays to Mondays. Mohammed Idris, Minister of Information, who disclosed the new policy, said the meetings may not be held weekly unless there are pressing issues to discuss. And on his part, Dave Umahi, the Minister of Works, said he presented a memo on inherited scope of road infrastructure from the past administration, covering a total length of 18,897 kilometers from the immediate past administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. In a separate development, a full-blown trial of former Minister of Aviation, Senator Stella Adaize Odoa, and China's Civil Engineering Construction Corporation, CECC, will kickstart at the Federal High Court in Abuja today, Tuesday, October 17th, by the federal government. Odoa and the China giant will face prosecution for alleged fraud, money laundering, and bribery running into 7.9 billion naira. Specifically, CECC will be made to face trial for allegedly bribing federal government officials to the tune of 7.9 billion naira through alleged transfers from its numerous banks' account to the account of beneficiaries of the graft to facilitate government patronage. On the foreign scene, the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has announced £10 million in humanitarian aid funding for civilians in the occupied Palestinian territories in response to the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict. He made the announcement in a statement to the House of Commons, in which he also reiterated the UK's condemnation of Hamas action in both Israel and Gaza and called for immediate access for humanitarian organizations to be allowed to deliver life-saving aid. This funding will allow key UN agencies to provide essential relief items and services. And in sports, in a thrilling encounter on Monday, the Super Eagles of Nigeria emerged victorious against Mozambique with a 3-2 scoreline. The feat marks Nigeria's first victory in a friendly game in 5 years. Mozambique initially took the lead 7 minutes into the game with a goal from Journey Katamo, creating concerns that Nigeria's winless streak in friendly matches might persist. However, OGC Nice Ray Murphy leveled the scoreline with a close-range shot 13 minutes later. We'll have details of this and many more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine where we have Francis and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
Government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates.
This was the Lagos voting for SpectrumTv to recover 40 lapses in counting.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the Constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigeria Police Force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My Lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My Lord, the Matters Council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my Lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my Lord. These cases are in court, my Lord. I'm just reminding your Lordship.
My Lord, sorry, my Lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
You're still on to Spectrum TV. Of course, this is Rise and Shine, and we're beaming live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. Of course, within the early hours of today, we talked about the fact that today is Poverty Eradication Day, and we give concerns and issues raised for the issues bordering on our collective growth and development as a people. Of course, we'll also be opening the phone lines at this point for us to make comments, particularly about the sacking of the CAC head, which of course has generated a lot of reactions. Seeing video footages of people from the ministry coming out to celebrate the sack is definitely something worth talking about.
Definitely, something worth talking about this morning, and it is the most topical conversation, one of the most topical conversations making the round this morning. Of course, the headliner for that particular conversation sees, the former AG being referred to as a vicious tyrant. So we see here the exit of a vicious tyrant. Corporate Affairs Commission, the staff jubilate over the sack of that particular boss. Of course, we saw the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on Friday announce the sacking of chief executive officers, CEOs of certain agencies under the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, and among the affected agencies were the Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC. Celebrating Abubakar's exit, of course, the entire staff printed banners describing the sacked boss as a vicious tyrant registrar who will be fondly remembered for backwardness, power intoxication, and sadism. Dear Nigerians, the phone lines have been opened, and I know that we'll have the video soon on our screens for us to see what the import of this is. But an entire agency is celebrating that a man has been taken away. Looking at remembered for backwardness, power intoxication, and sadism. An entire agency. We saw grown men and women in their suits come out clad with banners celebrating that someone has left.
Well, it's an unusual occasion. It's an unusual celebration, but it therefore shows one thing, that when people are in position of power and authority, they need to understand that that position is only for the time being, and they can be taken out at any point in time. But while we're expecting that video to come, of course, also expecting your call through the phone lines, let's bring you a special report on the World Poverty Eradication Day and the need for us to intentionally, as a people and as a government, prioritize the issue of building our economy. Stay with us on Rise and Shine.
International Day for the Eradication of Poverty is observed on 17 October every year. This day marks the adoption of the Convention on the Rights of the Child on 20th November 1989. In a world characterized by an unprecedented level of economic development, technological means, and financial resources, that millions of persons are living in extreme poverty is a moral outrage. poverty is not solely an economic issue, but rather a multi-dimensional phenomenon that encompasses a lack of both income and the basic capabilities to live in dignity. Many persons living in poverty experience many interrelated and mutually reinforcing deprivations that prevents them from realizing their rights and perpetuate their poverty, including dangerous work conditions, unsafe housing, lack of nutritious food, unequal access to justice, lack of political power, limited access to health care. Over the past few decades, the world has made great strides in the fight against poverty. However, there is still much work to be done. The International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, celebrated annually on October 17th, aims to promote understanding and dialogue between people living in poverty and the wider society. This year's theme draws on first-hand testimonials showing that those trapped in extreme poverty often work long, exhausting hours in dangerous, unregulated conditions, but still cannot earn enough income to adequately support themselves and their families. This year's theme calls for universal access to decent work and social protection as a means to uphold human dignity for all people, and to emphasize that decent work must empower people, provide fair wages and safe working conditions, and fundamentally recognize the inherent value and humanity of all workers. Similarly, universal social protection is urgently needed to guarantee income security for everyone, prioritizing society's most vulnerable members. The theme is also a call to political leaders and policymakers to use human dignity as a guiding compass in all decision-making processes to ensure the advancement of fundamental human rights and social justice over the pursuit of corporate profit. Strong global partnerships between government, businesses, and civil society organizations are vital to achieving equitable development and ensuring no one is excluded or left behind. Therefore, this year's observance is a chance to stand in solidarity with people living in poverty, truly listen to their daily struggles, and renew commitment to create a just economy focused on protecting human and environmental well-being over maximizing financial gains. The ultimate goal is to eliminate poverty entirely by creating the conditions for everyone to live with dignity. It was Confucius, the Chinese teacher and philosopher, who said, "In a country well governed, poverty is something to be ashamed of. In a country badly governed, wealth is something to be ashamed of." This wise quote is not just, but a reminder, but an urgent call to government across states, nations, and continents of the world to live up to its oath of service and corruption, prefer solutions to economic challenges, and ensure equity in the distribution of resources for the general good.
Of course, very critical issues raised there about for government of Nigeria and government of the continent of Africa and the world to prioritize right investment to address the different economic challenges that has bedeviled the countries, the continent, and back here in Akwa Ibom State, our very own primary constituents, is also a very grave concern. When you look at the number of people who are living below poverty index, we look at the number of people who are, at risk of further being driven into poverty, especially with the cost of living consistently on the increase, with the rate of inflation further being driven by the prices of petroleum products and, of course, that of food, is definitely a grave cause for concern. But I think the call by Kingsley Moghalu couldn't have come any more better or earlier than, as it is today. I mean, coinciding with the World Eradication or World Poverty Eradication Day, raising concerns on the need for government at all levels, people in position of power and authority, politicians particularly, to do the best they can to also sacrifice to grow and advance the country.
Well, it's a conversation that we must have. Nigeria and the fight for a better life. It's more like the whole world is beginning to fight for a better life. And today, being the International Day for Poverty Eradication, we are looking at it holistically from even the lens of the international community. And we know that Africa is most bedeviled where poverty is concerned. Most of our countries in Africa are third world nations, including Nigeria, and that grossly affects how poor we are as a people. Only in Nigeria we have about 130 million people living below the poverty line in the country. And when we are talking about 2030 SDG goals to be able to bring out Nigeria from the quagmire of poverty that we are in, how close are we to realizing these dreams, if at all we can? And just like Uju Kennedy of the Women Affairs Ministry is saying, if we begin to probe into some of the projects and some of the things that we have done in time past to be able to bring people out of poverty, have they been sustainable? Have they been implemented judiciously? We are seeing the likes of Better I Do now in charge of humanitarian affairs and poverty alleviation. She has been up and up with a lot of conversations. So far so good. We are looking at having a social register to know who is who in the country and what their particular needs are. Do we have sustainable, clear-cut vision and blueprints for how we will be able to lift Nigerians out of poverty? I know that in the former administration of President former President Muhammadu Buhari, I beg your pardon, he had certain goals and certain visions to lift a number of Nigerians out of poverty at the end of his administration. But Nigerians will beg to differ. At the end of that administration, we saw more people nosedive into more safer level of poverty in the country. So today is a day of raising awareness. Let's look at the indices. What exactly is making Africa as poor as Africa is? Although we have a lot of blessings, a lot of natural resources that should naturally make us to be standing on our feet. So what exactly is working against us in terms of having a lot more people on our continent poor as opposed to how rich we truly are as a people?
Well, of course, as far as poverty is concerned, Nigerians, the continent of Africa, has always been, very forward-thinking in identifying the problem, and that root cause of problem goes down to the leadership of the country. Because if you look at Africa, you look at Nigeria, for instance, like other countries of the under the continent of Africa, you realize that we have enormous, natural resources that can lift literally and virtually everybody out of poverty. But with these enormous natural resources, the fact that there is high level of corruption, the fact that there is high level of greed, the fact that, selfishness has eaten so deep into the fabrics of society that a few persons want to, take everything that is meant for the generality of the public for themselves, convert rather everything that is meant for public good for their personal interest at the detriment of the public. It comes down to the question of why what we need to do differently at this point in time. Yes, we know that as far as Nigeria is concerned, as far as Africa is concerned, the problem has always been traced to leadership. So what is the intention? What is the deliberate move that we are making as a people to strengthen our institutions, to strengthen judiciary, to strengthen the punitive apparatuses to ensure that people who consistently abuses the office that they have been entrusted with get to be punished for it, and that as they get punished for it, others would see it as a deterrent to not mismanage public funds, to not abuse their offices and use it to embezzle funds for themselves and their families. Of course, those concerns and conversations have been the front burner of this case as far as the issue of poverty is concerned. But then when we leave the corridors of power, we leave people in position of authority, we come down to the generality of the people as well. What are we as a people doing? I know that we've talked about the culture of Nigerians waiting in this political dispensation to be the PAs of the PAs to the PAs of the PAs, like everybody literally just waiting to be appointed as a PA to one politician on one issue or the other. So it also goes a lot to say much about the attitude of the people itself. In center climes where you see the youths have things to do to fetch them a healthy living, you don't see people, going to lined up in politicians' house and screaming, "My leader, the one who delivers, the non-poinam, and all of those, slangs that comes out as a way of singing praise and chanting, to fan the egos and the ambas of politicians, just so that at the end of the day, a few thousand naira can be dropped. And then when you also ask, when these few thousand nairas or hundreds of thousands is dropped, how much gets to individuals? I literally always will weep, Nigerians would weep when they tell you, especially in the just concluded electionary period, that women will trunk out in their numbers, travel wide to go be part of campaign. And at the end of the day, maybe 200,000 naira is dropped, and you're looking at maybe 500 women. So you're looking at maybe 500 naira by the time the top people in the group have taken what their cut is. So 500 naira distributed to women who traveled, the longest distance to get over there. That 500 naira would not even be able to take them home. So you ask the question, how do we resolve these challenges? The mindset of Nigerians needs to change. The mindset of Africans needs to change. Rather than also waiting on government, we also need to push for personal sustainability. We need to push for innovative ideas that can put food on the table. So while the call on government is for the provision of an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, to ensure that there is infrastructural development, there is security, there is power, of course, those laws and legislations that will allow for people to start businesses and be able to sustain those businesses, then we will know that Africa, Nigeria, it's ready for the transformation. But until we get to that point, and all of these indices that are needed for all-round development and advancement is put in place, then we are not ready to move away from poverty. But here is the danger. If we continue to stay as posited by the Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, if we continue to stay at a point where every person who is in the corridor of power is more interested in amassing wealth for his or herself and the families, a time will come when the commoners will rise, and the people who will be most at risk will be the families of those greedy politicians who, rather than invest in making sure everybody can fend for themselves, ended up amassing wealth for themselves and their families.
Well, these are the issues that we are having around the country at this time, having around, Africa. It's not just, one nation in Africa's problem. It is like, on the whole continent. And it's something that we need to begin to look at. I think it was, the lead pastor of Winners Chapel, that's Living Faith Church, that was recently saying that Africa needs to begin to think of its own solution. That's African problems being provided solutions by Africans, because we are the ones who understand where it bites. So if we are talking poverty, we need to begin to see Africans find ways to mitigate against what's happening on the continent. But of course, these and more are the conversations that we are having. Our phone lines are displayed on the screen. If you have concerns and contributions you want to make with regards to marking the International Day of Poverty Eradication. Do you have 2 cents? Do you have your thoughts? What do you think that the federal government or your state governments can do differently to help the poor around you? I know if you remember quite well when we started the conversation of palliatives and the federal government was saying that we're going to pay 8,000 naira to households. We had different people come out to prefer solutions right to the presidency on what they rather thought would be better steps to mitigate the burden of the subsidy removal. You don't know if you are the one that has the solution to what Nigeria's problems are. So at this time, we open up the phone lines for Nigerians to talk. Let's talk Nigeria and let's hear what you have to say. Of course, we're going to be bringing you the video now also with regards to the celebration of A.G. Abubakar's sack from the CAC. It's a worrisome one to behold, but then let's see. We will now begin to see how well the CAC is going to thrive now. Like we would say that Jonah has been taken out of the boat. So let's take that particular video, and then you feel free to call us and make your contributions on these 2 issues this morning. Okay, of course, that video will be coming up shortly. We do hope that we can bring that. We have also a guest who is on standby to talk to us this morning on certain strategies that we can put in place as a nation to see that we eradicate poverty from the country. Take a quick break. When we return, we will bring you everything else that we have in the concluding part of Rise and Shine. To stay with us.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyeken on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
It was Chris Jami Philosophy who said, "The faithful man perceives nothing less than opportunity in difficulties. Flowing through his spine, faith and courage work together. Such a man does not fear losing his life, thus he will risk losing it at times, in order to empower it. By this he actually values his life more than the man who fears losing his life. It is much like leaping from a window in order to avoid a fire, yet in that most crucial moment, knowing that God will appear to catch you." The 2023 World Spine Day theme, dubbed Move Your Spine campaign, calls on people to care for their spines by staying active. Evidence has shown that immobility and a lack of physical activity are contributors to spinal pain and disability. Move Your Spine therefore encourages people of all ages in all nations to get active and support their spinal health through movement. It is important to note that an estimated 1 billion people suffer with spinal pain, with 540 million people at any one time. Low back pain remains the leading cause of years lived with disability on the planet. It is also important to note that spinal pain and disability are more prevalent than cancer, stroke, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease combined. Undoubtedly, populations in many low and middle-income countries often have limited or no access to conventional healthcare resources or dedicated spinal health professionals. Supporting populations and communities in self-managing their conditions is therefore paramount. Even in high-income countries, back pain afflicts millions of people, resulting in an enormous impact on industry and the economy. Effective management and prevention are therefore key, and this year's World Spine Day will be encouraging movement as part of this strategy. World Spine Day calls for greater global commitment to tackling spinal pain and disability by government, communities, and public health bodies. For spine health experts, World Spine Day provides a perfect opportunity to meaningfully contribute and proactively participate in their communities. Move Your Spine seeks to focus attention on the diverse nature of spinal pain and disability at home, in the workplace, in schools, and in our communities, while addressing movement across the life course. It will highlight ways in which all people from all backgrounds can help their spines by staying mobile, avoiding physical inactivity, not overloading their spines, and adopting healthy habits such as weight loss and smoking cessation. As we celebrate the World Spine Day, the world is being asked to get involved in World Spine Day 2023's Move Your Spine campaign, while governments and all people that are urged to prioritize their health and invest more to guarantee quality health.
World Spine Day. How are you taking care of your spine? How much are you moving around? For those of us who do very sedentary work, how often do you try to exercise, move around, move your muscles, stretch a little bit so that, you know, you do not put a lot of burden on your spine. I would make sure that there was a time I tried to, after Rise and Shine every day, I'll try to take a walk around the facility for about 20 minutes. Every now and then, consistency is a problem, but you really need to stretch your bones. Do not sit for too long. It is actually very unhealthy. That is the message that we are bringing to you on today's marking and commemoration of World Spine Day. Make sure that your spine is healthy.
Of course, definitely, it's very important to prioritize exercising every now and then. That helps you stay healthy. But of course, we've been joined by Dr. Thompson Udofia Osora, who is a former Director and National Coordinator Non-Communicable Diseases, FMOH, headquarters Abuja, and also a good governance advocate. Good morning, Doctor. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Yeah, good morning, Francis.
Good morning, Doctor. Good to have you on the show. Yes, sir.
Yes.
You ready? Okay. We have a few conversations we love to have with you this morning. Thank you for obliging and coming on the show.
Sorry, your sound is echoing.
Okay.
Your sounds are echoing.
Can you get me clearly now?
Yes, clear.
All right, Doctor. So today is International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, and is a very significant day, especially when we look at Nigeria. I'd like to start you off from the comment made by Kingsley Moghalu, who has posited that the National Assembly politicians across the board should have their salaries slashed by 50% if they're indeed committed to changing the economic downturn in Nigeria. I'd like to get your comment towards that regards.
Oh, thank you very much, Francis. I agree partially with Kingsley Moghalu. It was a CBN for that period, as you know. I don't know if he slashed his own pay, but public servants ought to be reasonable. Parliament is not where you go. Because Nigeria is an aberration. Parliament is not where you go to make laws for your pocket. That's a mistake. Take home the figures we are aware of. It's about maybe House of Rep around 29 million a month, Senate around 13 million a month. That is too much for somebody who is serving the people and in a poor environment and the worst capital of extreme poverty. So I think that could be about take home for them should be approximately 10% of what they are taking home now. Yes, 2.9 million or thereabout. The other one could be maybe 3.9 million, as the case may be, not the figure they are carrying about. So we will relieve all those funds for productive ventures. Yeah, I agree with them completely. Not that from the president can do an executive order, the same thing. And then they don't need to fix their pay. That's the problem. It's illegal. They don't need to fix their pay. I'm surprised they're not suing them, taking them to court. It's now salaries and wages and income commission supposed to fix those remunerations, but they are fixing for themselves. That's the challenge we're having. They reduce drastically, not just 50%. In fact, the same with the president, the vice president, his ministers, they can do that as well. Yes, and I remember during Obasanjo's era or thereabout, I think they did this, they're using only Peugeot automobiles, Peugeot automobiles assembled in Kaduna. That will go a long way to increase productivity. Mm-hmm. And you have proper employment, of citizens. Those are areas where you can easily alleviate poverty in Nigeria. People are gainfully employed. Yeah, so that's it. I agree with Moghalu, but not that small. 50% is negligible. Yes, so if you can reduce it by possibly reduce at best 80%. Let they go home with 20% or what they are going home with now. Apart from that, they go to ministries and parastatals and harass them and collect additional funds and all that. So I think that's an area I think we should. They get a lot of income, which is not proper. It's the cause of our poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. This is very sound. I like the fact that you said 50% is still leaving them with a lot. They should be taking home about 10% of what they currently do. Of course, when we look at the gross number, it affects us, very strongly, and multiplied by the number of years that they're in that office. Some of them do that particular office upwards of 20 years. And imagine what a particular person amasses. So that is a very big problem. But I know that you had touched on it. One of the biggest questions we asked this morning is if these kinds of motions are even moved. We know that members of the National Assembly and the House of Reps will kick against it, because about last month, one of them had come up to say that what they even take as take home is not enough for them. When they are earning in millions monthly, multiplied by 12 months a year, like you said, it is illegal for them to be the ones fixing what their pay is. But how do you think that we can, fix that particular issue? Because that's a problem. They seem to have a bigger say in what they earn.
No, the solution is actually you need to sue them. Somebody, maybe Serap. Serap does a lot of good work. Serap and a few of these NGOs need to sue the National Assembly. Yes, for that. That is completely illegal. There's nothing they can do. I know they can turn around tomorrow and make a law. They're supposed to make the laws for the good governance of the geography, not for your pocket, not for the food you eat. Say, oh, we must always be eating caviar. You pass a law. It's ridiculous. It's only in Nigeria we see such things. I don't see it in other climes. I'm not aware any other client could fix things for themselves. It is wrong. It is very. In fact, other clients, they'll throw them out. But Nigeria is a very strange land. Other presidents would actually, in fact, they vote them out in their constituency almost overnight. And some, they'll be forced to resign. But here you do illegal things, you do wrong things, you steal, you're giving chieftaincy titles, you're giving honorary doctorate, you're giving for being a thief. It's a very terrible situation. That's why I think the country is actually in a very dangerous pathological scenario. Yeah, so you don't encourage other clients. You come and go there to fix your salary, man, all of them will go home.
Yeah.
All of them will go home.
We're also looking at the fact that today is the International Day for Eradication of Poverty. Africa is living in abject poverty. Most of our countries in Africa are third world nations, if not underdeveloped. We are not even, most of our nations here in Africa are not even among the League of Developing Nations. And poverty is a problem. Nigeria has about 130 million people living below poverty lines. If we continue to have these conversations on eradicating poverty, is this something that is possible? And how can we go about taking people out of the quagmire of multifaceted poverty?
Number one is having appropriate leadership. The leadership chosen by the people. Not most of problem Africa has is caused by colonial intervention, slave trade, all sorts of issues. And then when they left, most of them left reluctantly, and they leave behind lackeys. Till today, they influence who rules you in most of these African countries. In fact, other places, if you don't play ball with them, they remove you. Some signed the defense pact with those colonialists so that they station troops, their own troops, like the French countries, station their troops in those countries. If you misbehave, they send the troops to come and remove you overnight. And we will run that. They installed a sergeant before, say, a sergeant somewhere. I don't know which other places they install people at. So these are our challenges. So if those leadership genuinely chosen by us, you run our affairs properly, we'll be less import dependent. You'll be committed. You won't waste money buying, $1.5 billion to buy SUVs from outside for 400 and something parliamentarians. You will never do that. You use those people who want SUVs can use their money and buy it. Yes, these are the major challenges we have. So if with good leadership, is that a good driver or a good pilot? You pilot the affairs of the country properly, with integrity. Not people go in there to steal. It can never work. Africa can never progress as we currently do things. There are a lot of things that you don't need to. You can't afford to even go for conferences because the place is poor. But they will carry a retinue of presidential jets and fly to somewhere. And the other people come with their commercial airlines. And they pay. Some they pay for those airlines, but our own free presidential jet, free this thing. You're owing everybody in the whole world, and you're doing that. That's a major problem we have. People that are committed. I'm happy about this guy who was in Anambra before. He did very well. He left some money there and all that. He didn't touch people's money. He wasn't doing parties for people every day in government house. That's a waste of resources. Those resources can turn around a lot of things educationally, health-wise. Every socioeconomic infrastructure can be improved overnight if people are committed. That's a major challenge. Once you do that, it will change the scenario, and then we eat what we produce. You understand? You don't need importing foodstuff from outside. Importing a lot of things, including toothpicks. I was shocked that the current new CBN governor had to reverse the 43 items that was banned from importation or have access to CBN Forex. Yeah, that is very, very terrible. It looks like as if you had an enemy coming to rule you, so to destroy the basic things you are trying to do. So you can block those things. These are not, including toothpicks and many other funny things. We don't need all that. Can produce all those things here ourselves, and then we will save foreign exchange. Yeah, I remember when I was doing housemanship, the exchange rate of dollar to naira was 42 kobo to $1, United States dollar. Yeah, now you see the difference, about 1,000 plus naira to $1 United States of American dollar. That's the biggest disaster I'm ever aware of on this planet. It's really terrible, really terrible. And most things you're collecting from outside. Why can't we set up our industry and run them properly? We started with Peugeot Automobile, Mercedes-Benz, stay here in Bauchi. The other one, Mercedes was in Enugu. A few other areas, like the other one was in Ibadan. I've forgotten that the plant that was called. Then I think Fiat was in Kano. Things like that. We started assembly. And they were using all the products we had here. Michelin, Dunlop produced here. The other, you see, Isoglass, I've forgotten their name. The windshield, they were all produced in Port Harcourt in Ibadan. The other one were the tire. I think Michelin were producing in Port Harcourt. I don't know where Dunlop were producing. All these companies, people were gainfully employed. Productivity was high. That's why money had.
So, but doctor, with this kind of history, the question is going to be, how did Nigeria get to the place where we are? If we had these kinds of assemblage and the quality of life as a say the 60s, the 70s, how have we deteriorated this far?
No, I think it's the quality of leadership. It's just the quality. It's gone really bad. Go on with Yakubu Gowon was a fantastic human being. Yeah, still he left. He didn't have a house. Nothing. Fantastic. So
what about the problem of followership?
He was patriotic.
What about the problem of followership? Because we seem to be, that's another narrative that is building.
Followership still depends. Still depends. If you give them, if the leadership knows that it doesn't tolerate evil, theft, bribery, corruption, all that, they would know. His aides, his agent, all his assistants would know. This man doesn't tolerate this. So they will hide, they won't do it. But when you start doing it yourself as a leader, they will continue, they'll join you. They know you cannot complain. If you complain, they say, what about you? What about you stealing? Yeah, so it's for followership. If that engage, genuinely engage, people will be busy. Yes, they won't have time to start causing trouble. Yes, but you destroy the economy, destroy everywhere. They have nowhere to go to. They don't have jobs. That's when they start encouraging you to do it. They are willing to serve as thugs for you to go and rig elections and snatch ballot boxes, and all that, which is our bane.
All right, Doctor, let's come down to still the issue of followership. I know that at this point in time, the entertainment sector rather is doing very well. The social media, the internet has given young people the opportunity to make money, but we still have a significant number of Nigerian youths who would rather prefer to take to illegal means such as, online fraud. We're looking at the proliferation of ritual killings and Yahoo in Nigerian parlance. We're looking at the fact that a lot of young people are more interested in being PAs to politicians. So how do we begin to conscientize the minds of Nigerian youth, particularly to shift from this backward narrative to change the mindset?
Well, it's basically it's the leadership that creates the environment for evil to thrive or for or for the nation to be blessed with glory. It is what the foundations they lay. It is what they do on a daily basis. They are paid to govern. If you govern well, you will see the responses. If you govern well and ensure that basic infrastructures are available. We hear the tons of billions of dollars stolen for power, and we can't see power. Yes, those things are very frustrating. The artisans, the young people doing basic things, doing hairdressing, all sorts of things, and they don't even have power supply. They buy tiny generator which they repair all the time, and you increase fuel price. It's a big challenge. Yes, I think it's frustration, and then people don't have a means of livelihood. They'll go into. I know there are genuine people that do genuine internet, internet jobs, genuine internet production, forex, and all that. A few of them, for whatever reasons, possibly it's like I said, when a society are decayed, you have even the leaders are not morally upright. It's likely trickled downstairs. Yes, we have a leadership that is on drugs. They're likely to you have a lot of agents, that are young people.
Well,
so that is the resort to Yahoo. In fact, I'm told most of those boys arrested, many of them, they are doing genuine businesses, but because the policemen don't even understand what they are doing, merely having a laptop in your bag, you'll be arrested and asked to part with money before they allow them to go. Yes, we heard that even the current minister for digital economy, he spent 40% of his time going to Philips to release his staff, and those who are training, and his mentees too.
These are really strong issues, Doctor. So we'd just like for you to wrap up. Give us, your landing words and perspective with regards to how we can handle ourselves, especially in the face of dire situation. The economy is really in a downturn. There is a strong spike in cost of living. Food prices have gone up, with regards to inflation. Everything is tough. When we are having a conversation of eradicating poverty, which starts from even food security and availability, the basic things for, humans, what can Nigerians and people all over the world do for themselves at this time? We're also looking at the impact of wars all across the nations of the world at this time.
Optics. Basically, what the leadership should do, they should make sure they reflect the times. You don't start ostentatious expenditure and all that. Cut down everything. Let people feel that the economy is not good enough. In fact, I'm told they can't even pay the interest for all the debt the former regime collected. So the total money you're making from crude oil, in fact, they were told that they officially steal even the crude oil in a whole shipload. They stop all those business. That was a good moral leadership. Once they stop that, things would improve overnight. There's no doubt about that. Yes. So two, production. If you're not producing, it's a challenge. You end up buying everything and you want it. It's a vicious cycle. Produce everything we need. It is possible to do that. And we have good infrastructure. So it could reduce cost, the overhead of production. Yes, and then if we have to be, for the foreigners who are involved in economic crimes against this nation, we get them sorted out. We get them arrested and prosecuted. They will know that we are serious. They won't try it again. To bringing in products from outside everywhere to destroy our local industries here should be stopped. They have cheaper production, maybe in China or India, producing for the whole planet, and then you are producing under NEPA problems, PHCN problems, and all that. You can't be at the same cost. You can't produce them at the same cost. So it will flood your market and destroy your local industry and cause unemployment. So those are areas we should actually address seriously. The leaders themselves or the rulers themselves must start by themselves. It's important. And then drive locally made vehicles. No need importing things.
Strong
locally made. Debo was producing refrigerators here and all those things, PZ, all of them were using virtually local everything here. The other vehicle assembly plants, they've all disappeared. Volkswagen in Badagry Road, they've all disappeared. So please, just to encourage people, the innovations, every innovation by anybody should be looked into genuinely.
All right, sir.
There are many innovations in every sector in this country, but it doesn't see the light of day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anthony Thompson Udofia Osora. Of course, we've been speaking with an astute good governance advocate this morning, looking at how to eradicate poverty as we commemorate the International Day of poverty alleviation in the nation. Of course, he's said a lot of things, and one way for you to catch up on all that, please go to our social media platforms, and you would be, you gain access to this particular interview. Thank you very much, Dr. Osora, for coming on the show this morning. We absolutely appreciate your time and your sharing your wealth of knowledge.
Okay, thank you, and Francis.
Thank you very much.
You're very good anchors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Very strong conversations, strong points, especially when you come from the place of history. We need to lean back on history so that we go forward. But this is the march we can do on Rise and Shine this morning. Thank you for coming along in a stretch of time with us this Tuesday morning. On to tomorrow when we return to your screens. My name remains Uyai Aniekan.
And I am Francis Oyima Edet. Do enjoy the rest of your day.